Well, let's now look at how beliefs shape funeral practices, mourning as well as remembrance. I'm now joined by Dr. Jacob Mokhutso, who is a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Theology and Religion at the University of Pretoria. A very good evening to you, Doc. Thank you so much for making time for us. Before we get into our chat, I want to hear your reflections on that package that we just played for our viewers.
Thank you so much, Aldrin, for this opportunity. I think I understand the whole dilemma around funerals, more so when we look at what informs or what shapes the understanding of most people when it comes to funerals. For example, in African perspective, for example, a funeral is a ritual, a very serious ritual which is very important, because through a funeral, it is that process of transition where the deceased transcends into the spiritual world. So it is the expectation that those who are left behind has to go all out to ensure that that process runs smoothly. And I think that has been noted by the business people. And I think with modernity as well, it has led to the dilemma that we are seeing. But initially, African traditional religion does not condone such, but you see that it's happening. So because, and I think also there is that aspect of ensuring that our loved ones are buried in dignity, in a manner in which it would, give us that sense that, we have done our best. And I think when you lose a loved one, it is a bit difficult to measure whether you are being excessive or you are doing your best. And I think that is where the issue is.
Yeah. It's interesting that you use the word dignity, and in the interviews that we've had with the various funeral parlors, that's been their argument, that it is ensuring that it is a dignified send-off. But it somewhat also looks as a dignified send-off is determined also by how much you can spend and how deep your pockets are, or perhaps maybe even how much your funeral policy would be paying out.
Unfortunately, many use that as a measure, which is unfortunate. And also, to a certain extent, you would see that a number of people don't live life to enjoy it, but most people live life to spend most of their money in funeral parlors and so forth, so that at the end of the day, when they die or their loved ones die, they have that money to spend on it. And I think that is the unfortunate part.
Yeah. Another part around looking at the various customs that we have, if you look, for instance, with the African customs and certain traditions as well, is the wrapping of the body with a cow hide or a cow skin. We just played now in the package where the funeral undertakers and funeral directors were unwrapping a casket. And instead of wrapping the body with the cow hide is now actually incorporated into the casket itself. If we think about what the reason behind wrapping a body in a cowhide is, how far does modernizing that particular custom speak to the core of what the tradition is and what you want to achieve with that?
I think, Aldrin, culture evolves and some practices evolved as well. And I think that's where you would see such practices. And I think to a certain extent, certain rituals are symbolic, and perhaps to certain groupings in our society, as long as there is that cowhide, there is that element of, bringing that piece that we have done what was traditionally practiced. But you would also remember that we use cow hide and so forth, the skin of a cow, because we are not where we are currently, where we have caskets and coffins and so forth and so forth. So I think it is part of tradition that is evolving. You would also recall that now there is that practice also of using blankets, which were not there. I think the cow skin used to play that role. But now we have caskets that are designed, as you have mentioned. We have blankets that are also used. And there is also that element when it comes to blankets as well, where you see that they go for those very expensive blankets. And I think it is also the nature of death. That death, it is that emotional moments, and the loved ones would go out of their way to ensure that, you know, their loved ones are buried in a manner that would give them that peace.
Yeah, even if it does come at the expense of literally showing off in some cases. It brings them that sense of peace, I guess for some. But when we look at other religions, for instance, with the Muslims, when that burial takes place, the body facing Mecca as an example, and there almost seems to be, it is that this is the ritual that will be followed, this is our tradition, and this tradition will be followed to the T, whichever cemetery that particular individual Muslim deceased will be buried. Speak to us about that and how, for instance, evolution doesn't really seem to have affected that ritual.
That is true. And as I said earlier, I think one of the very important thing is every culture and religion has a cosmology. And that cosmology guides their values, their belief systems, rituals, and practices. And for the Muslims, their religion and their understanding of death dictates those rituals and how they bury their loved ones. And I think, and also the nature of Islam, how it is, that it is a religion of a book, and they follow and are guided by the Quran as it teaches how their loved one should be buried and so forth. And I think the distinction there between Islam and African practices is, as I say, the Quran is a religion of a book, just like Christianity and others. But with African traditional religion, it comes from a oral history. There is no specific Bible that explains how things should be done. And I think that is why there is this changing or different new ways that are incorporated in quite a number of practices that we are seeing. So with Islam, they are having a specific belief, and the same with Africans. And part of that, for example, as I've mentioned earlier, is the fact that a funeral, it is a process where we journey with the deceased to transcend, to transition into the spirit world. And again, it is believed that if those who are behind do not follow the certain rituals to the T, there may be some repercussions, such as death, sicknesses, and so forth and so forth. Hence, you would find rituals are practiced in our funerals. And also, we go out of our way to ensure that almost all aspects of a funeral are done as such. So the same applies with the Muslim community. They believe, they have a particular belief about an understanding about death, and also how their loved ones have to be buried in order to conform to their belief systems.
Okay, no, thank you so much for your time. Truly appreciate it. There was Dr. Jacob Mokhutso, who's a senior lecturer from the Faculty of Theology and Religion at the University of Pretoria.